am Kristen Jeffers, and I'm so happy that you decided to join me today. Um, a couple other notes here. If you need captions, LinkedIn and YouTube have them. This will be recorded. I will be presenting this again over the next few days. So if there's something that you miss or you have to go and come, please don't be afraid to do that. But I'm really, really excited that you have decided to join me today for something that I have been working on for a while. Like, if you've been involved with me in my work, you know that this has been something that I really do believe is the future of my work. And I believe it's going to be our future, and we need to think about it together. And of course, this presentation is free and open. You can share this, and I would love for you to share this with your colleagues. But at the end of this presentation, I'm going to share a couple ways that paid workshops that you can book with me to work even further with this. So I'm going to end our little background music here, so you'll have no trouble hearing me, and that won't pick up on the captions. I am using StreamYard as my main, and that's piping into LinkedIn and to YouTube. And of course, those of you who registered on StreamYard, you're seeing me on StreamYard. I can see some of your comments. Some of them I cannot. Some of them I won't see until I come back out of the StreamYard window. But feel free to leave any questions, comments, anything else. You will also be receiving emails with some of this information. So with that, I am about to, let's see, I also want to have a, let's see, I'm going to record this on Otter, so that way I have a recording of what we did today. And yes, Otter is working, so that will provide a transcript of what you are hearing me say today. I also have these slides, and they will be available. With that, let's go ahead and get into it. The purpose of today's webinar is to, okay, good. I'm making sure I have a special Canva window, making sure I can see everything. Great. All right, so today's purpose of the webinar, and really is to encourage Black folks. Like, if you remember anything from what we are doing today for this webinar, not that I'm not going to encourage you as friends and allies, other folks of color, my white allies and co-conspirators, but if you have been doing this work, if you are familiar with the word gentrification in the first place, you will know that much of what we are asked to do, and what most of the material, and even as I discovered pulling this together, and you'll discover with me in just a moment, the definition of gentrification, it doesn't make you feel good as a Black person. It doesn't make you feel included, and especially we are in this now time of high rents, of pay disparity, of weathering, of people banning being Black and being queer and trying to ban being disabled in the world. None of those things are great. I mean, we have genocides, active genocides in countries all over the world. Of course, obviously Palestine, Sudan, Congo, Haiti. Like, there's all these things are going on. And here in the States, we're not completely out of the loop. But what I want to offer today is something to help you be encouraged. So specifically for Black folks in the trenches, I absolutely want you to leave this webinar encouraged. And everybody else, I want you to have the tools to help encourage us. I want you to have the things that I, Kristen Jeffers, who, let me go ahead, and for those of you who have never met me before, in that case, I'm really happy to see you. I'm glad to meet you. But for those of you who have, some of this will be familiar, some of this will be very familiar. So feel free, if you know me already, if you need a water break or something, to hop away. But if you want to meet me first and get to understand why in the world am I coming to you today, And am I creating a product and a web workshop series, and I want to coach and work with people around this topic? What, why do I want to do that in the first place? Like, why me? Why now? So this is me. Yes, huge. I'm a huge transit nerd. My pronouns are she and they. I use them interchangeably. As we work more together, I'll talk more about how I discovered my own gender and sexual identity, but like me being Afro descendant, from the so-called state of North Carolina, which are the lands of the Eno, Tulalip, Saponi, Okanichi, and Shakori. I have been told that I also have lineage from one of those tribes, but that's something else I'm discovering, because I don't want to be that person to misrepresent my identity. But I absolutely know that I am descendant from those enslaved from the continent of Africa. I currently reside in Washington, D.C., specifically Southwest Washington, D.C. So living in Southwest Washington, D.C., especially near Southwest Washington, the ground zero of one of the biggest and most destructive urban renewal projects ever. And of course, we are we are repairing that little by little, but that's something else we'll discover together. And then if I had to pick some professional titles in the ways that I show up in the world, journalist is one. I have an undergraduate in communication from North Carolina State University. Community planner. I have a master's in public affairs with a concentration in community and economic development from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And then I've always been dabbling in fiber. I think it's something that's one of the ancestral practices I wanted to pick up. My mom taught me to sew when I was a child. And then I got busy doing the journalist and the community planner and building the Black Urbanist, which I'll talk to you more about in a second. And I haven't been doing as much, but thank you, pandemic. Now, of course, obviously not the destruction it has wrought, but as I'm still alive here, and of course, living and moving in hope, fiber art is what's kept me going through these times. And so let's get to some baby pictures. Y'all, those of you who've been to a presentation of mine know I love to bring out my inner child and show them to you. And so this is from, well, the picture on the left I know is from 1988. It's when I received the Christmas I received the trike that I am sitting on in the next picture. And part of the reason there's so much yellow in this presentation, and that's a new thing, like those of you who've been kind of watching my brand evolution and watching how I present to the world, yellow has been there. And yes, it is Beyonce related. It is Beyonce related. If you know, you know. And of course, that's something, if you continue to work with me, we'll go into more detail about pulling together colors, photos, items that will help you feel encouraged and feel grounded in yourself while the rest of the world is shifting around you. And then, of course, everybody else, towards the end, those other three ways, you still need to do them. But this is one way. Just I love finding these images, and I encourage you to find images of you doing some of the things that you like doing. And here's some of me. And so as I get older, photo on the left is March of 2012. Photo on the right is March of 2016. I've always just been curious about how cities work. My parents instilled that in me. I won't go into detail about like my full family life, but those of you who are familiar with me in my bio know I grew up in Greensboro, two parents, two Black parents, church community, like all the cousins and everybody together. And so I at least knew, and I apologize, I'm getting a little stripey. I'm here in DC. We're at golden hour and we're getting more light. So um, I have been, I was able to dream. And of course, I was that child on the trike. And then I was this adult who was wondering, I wonder how I can make my city better. And then, of course, I got the opportunity to move to Kansas City and do that. But you might notice in these pictures, I'm not looking at the camera. And I wanted to kind of portray this. And this was my image for a while. You would come to my site and then you would see the back of me. And I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, well, the back of me, and this is cool. And, the designer and the artist in me is like, oh, yeah, here I am. I'm cool. Look at me looking at the city. I'm going to take over the world. Now, of course, as I've started to decolonize myself, I realized, okay, this might not be an image that I want to necessarily portray. And even before then, I realized turning my face to the camera, and of course, I'm still looking at a computer screen, but at least I'm facing the camera like I'm facing today. You might see me if you run up, and this is pre-pandemic, by the way. By the way, if you see me like this in public, I'm masked and I'm probably on a patio and there's ventilation, but this is 2018 in Chattanooga when I did sort of like a cross country trip. And then this is a little clip. If you go to the blackurbanist.com, this will be here. Oh, and by the way, those of you who want to go to the defyinggentrification.com, hold tight. I'm still working on getting that running, but that's going to be the home of all this new information. But if I have your email address, I will be able to capture that, and I will make sure I put a link in the comments to capture email addresses and information if I don't have that from you. So you can keep up, but Black Urbanist was the first site, the original blog. I've been running that for 13 years. I finally decided, okay, I need to write. I need to put my face forward. I need to be more present in this work. And of course, now I'm even more present talking about the concept of gentrification, which is, to be honest, what everybody assumed I was talking about anyway. Now, as soon as I started talking, I started to get opportunities to be part of the news. On the left, the Triad City Beat, which is the local primary, there's 2 alt weeklies in Greensboro, and they're really kind of our backbone of our news right now. Let's be real. Like we're reeling here in DC from losing DCists, but honestly, local news has been kind of struggling. But the Triad City Beat's been there. Yes, Weekly's been there, and Triad City Beat honored me, April Parker, Irving Allen, and I'm so sorry I've forgotten my other colleague's name, but the 4 of us. And if you go back, and this is in the archives, you go back and read that article, it's still published, and they honored us in February of 2015 with this concept of being the next Greensboro 4. Now, of course, I personally, because it was 4 on February 1st, 1960, and it was more the next day. There are more, and I want you all to be like me and others and be the more wherever you are. This is just the beginning of this journey and this training, and I want you to be encouraged to be more. And then, of course, just the irony of being class privileged enough to be the young and not the homeless. And that's the thing, like when you talk about gentrification, yes, there's obviously, especially when you talk about it in the States and in the UK and in Canada, there's absolutely a racialized component, and we'll get to that in some other of the slides I have today. But there are some things that can make this whole concept of gentrification get a little muddy because of the opportunities, and if someone thinks of you as worthy, because the idea of gentrification is about wealth and worthiness, as it's written. But moved to Kansas City, got a chance to professionally work and do things. On the left side here, I am at I believe this is our second Women Bike KC Day, where we really literally spent the day thinking about the concerns of gender marginalized folks, primarily cis women, but also trans women and non-binary femmes like myself, and anybody else who considers themselves and comes up against gender discrimination when they're riding a bike or they're a pedestrian. And I also did some marketing and communication and graphic design. Then I got invited to go be on global stages. And some of you may remember me. Some of you may remember me from my time in Kansas City. Some of you read an article or a press clip I've been featured in. And some of you may remember me here in Vancouver. So this was 2015 and 2016 were the first time I got to use my passport. And even though I was just going across the northern border, and of course thinking about borders and everything, and thinking about these times, there are a lot of things that are very much common. And then within the last year, despite this pandemic time, and as you'll notice, I'm masked at the podium, I'm masked on this panel. But you may notice that some other things haven't changed really. You may notice the demographics of our conferences still have not changed. This is a room of students on the far left at Columbia University, and it was the students that invited me. Now, the student population is of all races, creeds, complexions, etc. And then Planet is in on the second round. Now, when we first voted for most influential contemporary urbanists, both in 2017, which is actually where my description comes from. That was more of what I was doing in 2017. And then now, I was in the 200s in the all-time list, and then I'm in the 100s. I'm at 71 in the current list, but I only have that, and I realized that more people, we should a lot, and I've said this when the first set of the first list was released and names are omitted. There are so many people that I know I will run out of names, and I believe everybody is a contemporary urbanist. Everybody has something to say about gentrification and has an effect. So the goal of this is to build the table and grow the room. And so, yeah, living in DC, I get to play with urbanism all the time. My partner Les, who some of you know from her work, it's so fun to just be able to walk to the tidal basin. This is in the middle. That was the first day at the Potomac Yard Station, which, of course, who knew the news we were going to get, that station is going to be very busy potentially down the line. And then, of course, this was actually after January 6th of 2021. Like, I would have never imagined getting back to Capitol Hill, and it was such a peaceful day. Now, it was a cloudy day, but a peaceful day. But yes, living in Washington, D.C. is something else. If anything, that's where I learned about the word gentrification. And for the longest time, I thought about it in a DC context. But now, unfortunately, some of the press and some of the work I've done, especially in 2019, right before we went into lockdown and we shifted our thinking and our lives for the COVID pandemic and some of the other illnesses that have come through the world since then, just it's hurt my heart to think about that my home state is dealing with housing insecurity, tent cities. Like, we were one of the bread baskets of the world. We were one of the textile mills of the world. We prepared raw furniture, but all these economic phenomena have hit us. And so now gentrification is a global conversation. Gentrification may look different, may sound different, may seem different no matter where you live, but we have to have some time to defy it. So I promised in the description that we would talk about some definitions. And so let's get into some definitions here. So if you wiki, and I know many of you, like for me, that's where I start. Now, of course, I start at Wikipedia and I continue to build from Wikipedia. I don't stay with Wikipedia, but my goal with this work, especially our fellowship program, is to really capture the folks that are going to Google gentrification after, say unfortunately, they might be sitting in a homeless shelter, and they might have access to their phone. They're like, okay, somebody told me that I got evicted from my apartment because somebody learned something about gentrification. What is that? So they read this definition. It says urban socioeconomic process. Depending on their reading comprehension, and let me emphasize, there are people of all education levels that are finding themselves with housing insecurity. So there may be people sitting there and be like, okay, you say urban socioeconomic process. This is so blank. Here I am sitting here evicted. And then others will be like, okay, well, when am I going to eat? What does that got to do with if I'm going to be able to do something? And so this says what it is. But when you actually click on the definition, it gets even more pointed. And I'm going to try to actually add an article from the StreamYard. You may be seeing this. Now, if you're seeing this on replay, this article will be in the comments. But I'm going to try to add a comment to our... oh, great. It looks like for those of you who are on watching, well, looks like YouTube watchers and anybody in the StreamYard window, you will get this article. LinkedIn watchers, I will add this article I'm quoting from in the next slide. But yeah, just the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in. Okay, so wealthier people, that's saying something. improving housing. We're assuming that housing needs to be improved, that people aren't already wealthy, that we need new businesses, and that because of there's assumptions that nobody was there, it typically displaces current inhabitants and assumes that current inhabitants aren't there. And then, yes, number two, because we are talking about this word and we are engaging with it, this is the one that many of you who are urban planners, and I'll include myself, for the longest time I would not accept the number two piece, but it does make sense when you think about, for many people, it is not necessarily the built environment, but it is the cultural environment that is lost when a built environment has been changed. And so let's talk about the first person to put this word together, British sociologist Ruth Glass. And so those of you who have that access to that article that I've dropped in the comments, those of you streaming on YouTube, as well as you'll have this on LinkedIn if you're watching there, and you absolutely have it if you're watching on the StreamYard window. Ruth Glass is a British sociologist. She created the word to convey the process of becoming gentry, which you can look this up, but this means like the landed class. This is very much the British denotation. This is also why when we bring this concept to the States, things get a little wonky. Now, this is, and my apologies for Caribbean being misspelled there, but still, she actually used the word West Indian, which I was trying to get away from, because once again, I'm trying to get away from improper use of cultural terms here. But still, this Islington neighborhood, a neighborhood in London, white English people decide that they value the neighborhood again. And it really gets kind of underscored with Sharon Zuckton, a U.S. sociologist, in this Curbed article I posted in 2014 describing Ruth Glass's meaning. This is a direct quote from Sharon Zuckton, that they are people, the people that Ruth Glass saw as gentrifiers are people with cultural capital, artists, writers, teachers, professors, etc. By the 1950s and early 60s, that group of people begins to appreciate the urban environment in a way that other middle-class people do not. The old houses, the crowded streets, the social diversity, the chance to be bohemian, and also to be around lower-class people of all different backgrounds. The very factors that are driving the more mainstream middle class out of cities. Now, this is the last definition I'm going to post. There are a litany of other definitions that have come from other Black folks and other people of color and others that are not considered to be this middle class. They're definitely not considered to be mainstream. We're not going to go into the phases, but I encourage you all to look up the phases of gentrification. But we will go into that detail. If you join me for my workshops, we will parse this out. We will break this down. We will take the time to think about this. But today, just thinking about this, if this is another thing you take from this webinar, think about what this definition assumes, and what this interpretation leaves out. And if you can think through that, then you'll understand why so many people are adverse to you using the word gentrification, even if you mean well and you want to bring something new and bright to the community. Even if you're an artist, especially if you're a white artist, or yes, if you like a certain architecture type, we have to be mindful that if we want to end climate change, if we want to end housing insecurity, we can't assume that we're not housing artists, writers, teachers, professors, and that those, just because you have that job or you don't have it now, or if you don't have a certain thing, that you're not wealthy. And so that to me is what has inspired me to defy gentrification. So I'm changing up the colors here. And so this get used to these colors, because our bigger workshops are color coded. And so this is for the gentrified. And who do I mean when I'm saying the gentrified? So basically, you're displaced from your home or your culture or both because you are deemed unwealthy or unworthy to continue to co-occupy space. So often you're Black, you're in the Latina diaspora, and yes, I want to notate that means you could still be Black or Asian or indigenous to the Americas or from anywhere else, and you you may be in dense urbanized areas, you may not be. Like, I do consider things like loss of land loss, farming land loss, as a form of gentrification, because it's a person that can come in and that can afford your land. You've lost your tie, or they force you off the land. And then sometimes folks in LGBTQIA plus or disabled communities that do have white, who are white, and so they have that advantage. But they're in areas, and we're seeing this in areas where they, like, unfortunately, certain states in the United States, certain countries, where it is illegal to be in the LGBTQIA plus community, or you have been deemed unworthy and unusable. Like, unfortunately, some folks that have debilitating illnesses, and for many, COVID is that. People have been unworthy and pushed out. People have, as soon as we let go of some of the pandemic procedures here in the States, and I know in other places as well, people lost their homes. Businesses, longtime businesses went away. Some people were no longer able to wake up and maintain, and we don't have, at least not in the States, not consistently a consistent social safety network. We did model that a little bit, but even what we had, where we had the stimulus checks and things of that nature, it did not cover everybody. So this, I'm hoping with this webinar and this course, and those of you, I also want to make it clear, I'm making an assumption for those of you who want to join these next workshops, that you are in a position to be able to do so. If you are finding this interesting, and when you get to the payment page and you're like, Kristen, I'm not quite ready for that, please let me know, because I want you to be part of this. But either way, if you know, I want to also highlight here that housing discrimination and pay and access discrepancies, there's specific ones that just happen to Black folks that really show up over and over again. Now, you may find that Black folks adopt certain ways of behavior to maintain a status quo, or try to thrive in these environments. You may find, Black landlords, and you may be one, and you may feel like, okay, well, you're helping, but there's certain things that are going on that will make life hard for you, and making life hard for others. So basically, I'm moving into 4 of those who are gentrified. And let me just put this back up again. Definitely just take a note of this, that whatever your programming is doing, and I think I saw a question about what can you do to help people. Be mindful that pay discrepancy, healthcare discrepancy, housing quality, educational quality for students, if your plan is not thinking of those things and communicating with folks in those silos and breaking down the silos to help people make sense of what's happening in all these sectors, if we're not looking at our communities holistically, any of our plans to defy gentrification on an infrastructure level will fail. But I'll touch on that a little bit when we get to the infrastructure slide. So these are ways, these first 3 ways of defying gentrification are specifically for people who have dealt with gentrification. My goal with this is not to add work to you. If anything, I welcome you, especially if you know that you want to continue with me and work on the workshop. Just keep an ear out and stay in the email, because after this, that's kind of all I expect you to do. I only expect you to have faith, and like, I want to see pictures of you that look like this. And yes, even the elders, and I'm hoping that the elders sitting in the church will be friendly to the young men with the locks, and they won't criticize some of these other people. But that's it. Like, we'll dig deep into some of our cultural nuances of gentrification and how it affects us, like, nuance. But having faith in yourself, having faith that you're worthy, that you're valid, that no matter what your rent is, no matter what your job payment, what you're getting paid at your job, no matter if you're not in a position of power. Now we're building power, and one way you start building power is through having faith in yourself. And so in the course and in the workbook that will accompany it, we'll get deeper into that. We'll make sure that you have good grounding principles. It's not all breathwork, because I know breathwork doesn't work for everybody. For some people, it might be journaling. For some people, it might be taking a walk. Some people are rolling in your wheelchair, whatever it is to kind of ground you and remind you to be who you are and to be proud of who you are, and don't let anybody telling you that you're not worthy take away from you. That is one thing that I wake up every morning and I have to remind myself for. I even say this in the workbook, that I had to like tell myself, this class is worthy. We need this class. We need this. The world needs this. This is valid. And just keep telling yourself to say that. And then my next way you defy is cultivating. And so the basic way I define this, and that's why I've got people like doing hobbies and fun things. I got a DJ on here. I got a lady crocheting that I could easily meet at one of my like fiber crochet nights. I've got some black, I'm not sure if they own this farm or not, but it's their farm and they're cultivating food, and I've got folks cooking food. And then I've got a black man teaching in a classroom, which unfortunately that is a job position, and that is something that is rare. And that's probably part of the reason that Ruth Glass thought she could get away with just saying that only teachers are only white, which is why I'm interpreting. I'm gonna be pretty straightforward here because others are being straightforward. So, all I want to honor all of my elders and ancestors that have passed down folk ways, continue to pass down those folk ways, and to my peers and my mentees. We're gonna end. If you join me for the workshop, I will make sure you have a hobby. It doesn't have to be my hobby, but I want you to have a hobby. I want you to have something to do. We'll bring playlists. We'll do all these things together, even if you're coming and taking the course in the virtual environment, so that you have something to do. And that way you're not sitting around thinking about what's bad. But of course, I want to also get you ready to do the work. This isn't like check out of the world, but I want you to start with getting grounded. And the other thing that will ground us is just convenience. Now, this is kind of on the line, because convenience for me means, of course, it's more of a way I defy gentrification, because I'm able to rent an apartment that has a lot of stuff going on around it. But this convenience in many ways comes by our co-conspirators. Those of you who are asking the question in the chat, how do I as a person of color that's not black, or a gentrifier, for lack of a better word, how do I help? And so giving us the space to have faith in ourselves, encouraging us, building up our self-esteem, allowing us to cultivate folk ways, cultivate cultures, giving us space to do that, not disrupting when we have that space to do that. And then the convenience, providing that convenience for us, the same convenience you have where you can walk to the grocery store, you can go in the doctor's office, and that doctor will look after you. And of course, this is where, as I said before, when it comes to like provision of services, especially in the States, now many of us that are white even are finding provision of services isn't there. For many of us who are black, that's a normal day, unfortunately. And it should not be normal for anybody to not have this level of convenience. These children walking to school without issues. I assume they're walking to school. They're walking anywhere. This man who looks like he's shopping for his supplies, and he has his coffee shop, and his coffee shop is a community space. Let me run back just a minute. This black doctor helping this black patient. They're both at least feminine presenting. This man in the corner that's having a good time at the shopping mall. And this young person who is waiting for a train has a mask for her own safety and protection, just having the access to things. And so let me get into what it means to be a gentrifier. I've kind of alluded to some of these things, and really all of these 6 ways build on each other, but there are definitely 3 that I want you to focus on if you are or if you are gentrified. And there are 3 that I want you to focus on if you are the gentrifier. So once again, it was faith, it was cultivation, it was convenience for my gentrified. Now, for my gentrifiers here's my definition. You are actively or inactively. Let me make it clear. Like, for many of you on this call today, I know y'all well. I know who I talk to. I know who I tend to attract. For a lot of people, they will not come to they would not even come to a webinar called Defying Gentrification anyway, because they're like, okay, Defying Gentrification, that's going to be a waste of my time. I'm not going to come. But for many of you who came today, you want to do better. You want to try to make things better. You're not actively doing this, but you are deemed worthier, sometimes even worthier than me. Like you're getting paid more on your job. You can easily afford these rents, or you can easily find somewhere else to go. Like, even if you get priced out of one place, you can easily go to another place. You can blend into the community. You're not being targeted for a marginalization that you have, and you can continue. Um, you're deemed worthy. But if there's some of y'all that are here that are actively doing the first part of this statement, absolutely, please stop. Please stop. Please let this be the opportunity you had to stop. If you just happen to come by my YouTube or my LinkedIn, or just somehow accident, or if you're watching this replay, you happen to come on this page, please take this opportunity to stop. Before you reach out and try to email me and tell me I'm wrong, just stop and think about what you're doing. Because I, as someone who studied economics, who is running a small business, who is in business courses, I understand target markets. I understand needing to pay for things. But that's what I talked about before. Cultivation, encouraging people to cultivate and be resourceful, takes away from the need to always be over profiting. Now, there's nothing wrong with profiting, but because I believe everybody should profit, but nobody should profit at the expense of someone else. And so, yes, it is often European white nationalities, and sometimes if you, and this is, you may not be familiar with this concept of white passing. That's more of like, if you've been in these kinds of courses, if you've been involved in DE&I circles, you may be familiar with that terminology. But basically, you can also, and of course, I forgot to add the Q there in LGBTQIA. There are actually two A's, but we'll get into that later. But still, sometimes if you are a Black person, if you're a queer person, if you are a disabled person, and you have a middle class job, you have one of those, you're an artist, you're a teacher, you're an office worker. And I do kind of blend the office artist and the office together, especially in this day and time. With the access of technology, all of us can professionalize our work. I mean, you see me, I'm doing this webinar, I'm sitting in my home, I'm sitting in a very nice home. Like, in many ways, I too, even though there are provisions that have allowed me to be in this apartment and I'm not paying the full market rent of where I'm at, it's still more than we've ever paid. And so I recognize that that's something I had the opportunity to do. I recognize when I come in rooms, and because I'm fair complexion as a Black person, people are disarmed. When I wear glasses, and that's kind of seen as a disability slash like me being smarter. There's certain things that make people comfortable. So I don't necessarily have all of the effects of gentrification, but yeah, I still pay more in rent. And so we will still, when we dig into our ambassadorship, and that's what our ambassadorship, our fellowship will focus on the first three ways. Our ambassadorship will focus more on the systemic elements. And I'm happy to have other peers like myself that have been thinking about this, that are ready to do the system dismantling, but only after we ground. We gonna ground first, and then we're gonna move into this part, because this part's the part where you'll lose faith. You'll not want to cultivate. You'll not want anybody to be convenient to you. You'll want to move into like a cabin in the woods. And if you want to move into a cabin in the woods, I want to be able to assess that in our first like fellowship training. And you can still be a Defying Gentrification fellow. You just know that you're not the one, that you'll be doing something else. And so, how can gentrifiers defy gentrification? What you've been waiting for. So you just need to care about people. Effing care about people. Now, I would say the other word, but I don't want to be like knocked off of YouTube, and I don't want to be knocked off. I just want you to care, and I want you to care as hard as you can. I want you to be one of these people. Like this gentleman sitting here, I'm assuming that these folks are working and they seem to be excited and happy. Be that guy at the workplace. Be this guy right here at the workplace, helping these folks. Here all these diverse looking people are having a nice party. even here, and this is nuance, this is where we as middle class folks in the Black community, we are learning that it is okay to cry, it is okay to remote. Be that person in your community that allows us to have our full um our full humanity. And then this right here, these young people, oftentimes we don't learn until we're older that there's something wrong with each other. We're just kids playing together, we're communicating together, we're being friends. We might let this young Black boy lead, this I'm not sure what nationality this child is, but with her dark hair, it may be assumed that she could be of any race, because dark hair runs in all races. And then of course this child appears white, this another child appears white, but none of these children are hurting each other. And unfortunately, of course, we recently have heard of several situations where even teenagers are hurting each other to death because they are different. And likewise, right now, recognizing that our Muslim friends, our Palestinian friends, our Congolese friends, like, being mindful of being in the right relationship with each other. Because guess what? Same earth, same world, same climate, which gets us into infrastructure. We do need to be thinking about, like, you know, many of us will be happy to say we need public transportation, we need dense urban environments. But how many of us really are thinking about housing this family in the middle for real? How many of us are guilty of saying, "Oh, I would love to house that family in the middle, but what's their credit score? Does that gentleman in the back, does he have a job that pays? The other two adults, are they working, or have they had things happen? Do they know how to take care of a house?" We ask so many questions of people when it comes to needing basic shelter. And yes, we some others that we know will ask a lot of questions about needing public transit. Others will ask a lot of questions about needing pedestrian plazas and apartment towers and affordable housing in this kind of environment. But what about just the basics? And what is the face of your programming looking like? And even if you have these people, and I'm sure these people might even they probably showed up on the flyer. I got these images out of Canva. I'm using Canva as my presentation platform today. Like, if you see these people, like, and honestly, if you are these people, do y'all live here? Do y'all have y'all had a chance to live here? Has somebody come up to you and asked you off color questions about whether or not you're worthy to be in your home? We do need to be thinking about that. We need to examine that in ourselves, internally, externally, no matter who we are. We need to, those of us who are in the position of crafting infrastructure, we are right here in DC, of course, we are looking at needing to fund Metro differently, asking big questions. We're trying to make it through to next year. But even right now, if we lose all 750 million in that budget gap, there's people that are going to be left on the side of the road. Public transit is not going to be guaranteed. Of course, those of you who are watching me on LinkedIn probably saw my LinkedIn post that I posted from my colleague Jerome Horn, talking about how Indiana has decided to not offer, to ban public transportation in Indianapolis, the biggest city in the state, this place that would benefit the most from public transit. It is being banned. And yes, there are people blatantly saying they don't want Black communities, brown, Latinx communities, Asian communities, because we live in a world now where that same state has said they are no longer welcoming LGBTQ communities in certain cases. We need to think hard about our infrastructure plans. There are places that are building highways. We're laughing at them, but is that you? Are you in a position where you are funding a highway? You're funding something that is not going to help, and we're going to go have to revisit that, even if we get to revisit that, because right now, in many places in the United States, we had an extremely warm first part of this week. Places in Texas, 100-degree weather, and a winter or two prior snowfall. We are not in a position where we can't think about infrastructure and access. And speaking of access, everybody needs access. Now, of course, we like to think about the ramp, which I have my questions about this ramp, because this ramp is already on cobblestones. These folks meant well, and I'm not entirely sure that the ramp actually connects and there's enough room at the top of those steps. Be mindful when you're working with mobility needs to actually ask people that have mobility needs what they need and incorporate it. You might run into people and you wonder why they're, oh, they're in a wheelchair. That's so sad. And then they're like, stop looking at me like that. I'm nobody special. That's right. We as building environment professionals, and that is who I'm talking to in this section. These are your three ways. Care, access, and infrastructure are your three ways to defy gentrification. Making sure that spaces are equitable. You're my planning directors. You're my CDC heads. You're my pastors. You're my teachers, and you're even artists that are doing well. You live with neighbors, and you run it. You make good money. You might run into the one neighbor that has managed to magically stay in that building because they have the last rent controlled unit. You're that person to make sure that everybody knows about that neighbor. You're that person that coordinate like mutual aid and all those things. And no, I don't expect you to have all the answers at the end of this webinar, which is why we have these next steps and these next steps that I've been alluding to. So here we are. We're at this part where I'm introducing you to what we're going to do next together, what I would like to do next with you. And so I have developed, and I've been thinking about this, and you all have the opportunity listening to this to be part of the pilot inaugural Defying Gentrification Fellowship Challenge or the inaugural Defying Gentrification Ambassadorship Mastermind. So this is what I've come up with right now. Now, one of the things about being part of the pilot group is that you're going to help me shape what this looks like for future people. This is a perfect opportunity for you to, one, get in on the ground floor. I do consider this a professional development opportunity. So yes, this is something that you will get a certificate for. There is a payment plan available for you. You will look at your life and look at ways to defy gentrification. Now we're gonna test out the entire workbook. We're gonna look at all 6 things, but we're gonna mainly focus on the first 3 and make sure you have the first 3 together. We're going to do this over a week. It's gonna feel like a boot camp, which is what a lot of challenges do. We're gonna meet every day over lunch period in Eastern time zone. Now, because it's the 11 to 1 period, and what I will do is I will assess our needs. I really would like to bring in people from a lot of key cities throughout the US and throughout the world. So even though that's the time zone that is listed, I want you to apply anyway. And once we get a critical mass of people, I am willing to work with and tailor to have some of our material go live in other time zones, because the goal of this is to build a framework to you as Defying Gentrification fellows. The first set of fellows will be shaping what we're doing. When my workbook comes out, you'll be trained in how to use it. You'll be using it. You'll be helping people use it. You'll be using it over and over yourself. You won't just be that person that's going to go to one of the bookshops and find it and have to fend for themselves. You're going to get someone that's there for you. And in subsequent ways, yes, people are going to buy the workbook and they're going to have an opportunity to join a fellowship challenge or an ambassadorship mastermind in the future. But you coming into this inaugural group that will happen April 1 through 5 of this year will have that opportunity to be part of this. And so let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to the type form that I created for you all to register. Now, this is kind of a rough draft of the type form. You don't have to, I'm gonna also make it clear that you don't have to pay it today. We're going to, after I talk about the ambassadorship mastermind, and actually let me go ahead and talk about the mastermind group. The idea of the mastermind is still, while this may be a more mixed group, like both groups I know will be, unlike what I did last time. Last time I taught a class, I did an affinity group, and then I did like a white leadership group. That didn't really work as well as I expected. I would love to have this conversation together, but keep in mind, and one of the things that you will have to agree upon, and especially if you join the ambassadorship mastermind, and especially if you want to remain in the Facebook group that will come with the fellowship challenge, you have to respect you. We are centering Black voices. You're going to hear things that are going to make you uncomfortable. Now, we're not going to just let this be a free for all. Like, there are going to be some limits, but I want people to be clear and open about what they're feeling so that we can address how this is or isn't helping us get to where we need to go, and is or isn't helping us continue to manage to have an earth to live on. So both my fellows and ambassadors will be trained to be mentors, but ambassadorships will have priority over that. Fellows, that'll be kind of more on a case-by-case basis, and generally fellows, you'll do the fellowship program and then you'll apply into the ambassadorship may be your right choice. There will be more details coming out via email. I will be emailing you more details as I recap this class. If you are watching on replay and it's been a few weeks, if we're getting closer to March 21st, and let me talk about March 21st here. I will be doing a webinar that just goes through the details of both of these, the challenge and the mastermind, and what it will entail and what we will be doing and what will be expected of you if you are in the pilot class. And of course, there will be more versions of this. If we have registrants, we may also change the date depending on how many registrants we get. But you will be receiving, if you registered on StreamYard, you will be getting that email sometime in the next 48 hours with a recap of what we talked about today and the information. And I will go ahead and put the link into where I can put the links, so that way you all can take a look at this and you can decide if you would like to be part of what we are doing here and what I'm doing here with this next chapter of Black Urbanist, Kristen Jeffers Media, and everything else. And of course, you can continue to follow me. I'm not gonna just go away and stop posting. You're going to hear you all coming to this webinar today. You are the first people to hear this framework. And then others will be hearing this framework. You'll see this on my socials. I've been kind of test driving some of this on the socials. And so now I'm putting this type form for you here today. I'm glad to see that there's still a few of you all who are here live. We did this in an hour, less than an hour now. Let's see, some of these. Okay, yes. If you are watching the replay on YouTube, you already have this admission form. And you will get an email from me with more details. Some of the details will be the full price of the ambassadorship. We'll talk more about what that will entail and when and how that will be set up. I also want you to go ahead and know the number for the fellowship program, because that's going to happen first. That's going to be kind of the starting program for everybody. I'm going to have everybody, to be honest, I probably will have everybody start with the fellowship just so we can get a sense of like where everybody's workload. And thank you all, of course, yes, thank you all for coming. And yes, mark your calendars. Our next webinar about all of this will be on March 21st. I'll be going through these masterminds, but you will be getting emails again like normal. You will be getting a lot of emails about these opportunities, but no, I will have a way where you'll get the emails that will be more reminders and be more talking about these paid opportunities. And then there will still be at least one monthly email, roughly every month. Cause I know technically, I think our monthly email window passed cause I was working on this, but we will still get a monthly email with all of my updates and what's going on and everything else. You'll still get one of those. That won't be changing. But what will be changing is I will be focusing my urban planning work in this framework. One other thing that I welcome you to bring your questions about on March 21st or sooner, or send me an email about, if you are interested in bringing a customized version of the Fellowship Challenge and the Ambassadorship Mastermind to your company as something that is embedded. Bring those questions to the Q&A webinar and be on the lookout for emails that will spell out and detail out what these new programs will entail. So with that, I see your those of you who are that I can see, thanks for, I thank you so much for being here. I thank you for, yes, your support for all the years. And I think that we can not only just defy gentrification, but we can eradicate it. Everybody is worthy. Everybody is valid. Everybody deserves a place in the world. We only have one Earth. We're trying to go to space, but from what I've seen in space, there's not going to be a lot of room for us to do that and do that well anytime soon. But we still have an Earth to do things on and enjoy. So let's do our part to be here for the Earth. And remember, let me remind you, like, if you missed this, everything else, or if you're coming in here late, or if you missed the three things that I want you to be mindful of, I'm gonna just roll everything back quickly before I go off of the webinar today. So at a glance, let's remember to, if you have been dealing with gentrification, continue to have faith, cultivate your community and cultivate your hobbies and cultivate your resources. Find every way to make life convenient for yourself. And yes, that means, I know some of you that's purchasing vehicles, for some of you that's living in smaller towns, for some of you that's living with family that aren't in necessarily hot cities, but do what you can first and foremost to ground yourself so that you'll be ready to do this other work for these other three ways of caring for people, and that you know when to recognize when someone is caring for you. You recognize when someone is providing you infrastructure and that you are looking to provide infrastructure and care for people, and that you are providing access for people. Once again, our next steps will be our Fellowship Challenge and Ambassadorship Mastermind. The Fellowship Challenge will be first. We will be meeting tentatively scheduled for April 1 through 5 at 11:01 p.m. Eastern. And by then, I think we'll be in Eastern Daylight Time. But depending on who applies and who submits information on our Typeform link, and please let me know, like, if you are interested in this. You do not have to pay on the Typeform link right now. The Typeform link is just for you to express interest, but that will be the rate if you do elect to join us April 1 through 5. You will not get access to the workshop if we have not made an arrangement, whether it's a payment plan or if you receive a scholarship. And some of those will be available as well, because I do want a variety of people in this pilot class to help me shape what this fellowship will look like, so that instead of just one person, one figurehead, me being a figurehead by myself, we have a squad of people out here doing their part to defy gentrification. And then we will grow into this ambassadorship mastermind. And some of you will be ready for this, and we'll be able to assess that after the challenge period. And yeah, March 21st, come with your questions. So with that, let me stop sharing. Yep, I'm big again. Yes, summary email, LinkedIn folks, I will be posting the Typeform link to you. You will also, over the next 48 hours, realistically, it probably will be Saturday or Sunday, maybe even Monday, but in the next few days, you will get the Typeform link to express your interest in this program. You can watch this webinar back, and I think I'll go ahead and put the Typeform link in the LinkedIn comments so you can go ahead and pay attention to that. But you will get a summary email. But for LinkedIn folks, I will put the link in there. I know I have to manually do that. StreamYard folks and YouTube folks, you should have that Typeform link. Go ahead and express interest and let me know if you're interested. And until next time, and until we come together again, thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.